Station 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. A beautiful Thursday. Hope you're doing well. We broadcast from the Paddock Mall. I think most of you know that. If you walk through this mall, you're going to meet lots of entrepreneurs. Every single one of these shops in here. Every single one of these shops. Even Macy's. Even though Macy's is a corporate thing. Well, maybe not. Maybe not in that case. Because I think the person who manages Macy's, probably the uppermost person, wouldn't really be considered an entrepreneur. But I think all these little stores in here, they're all started by somebody with a little idea, you know, and even if it's a franchise, that's still an entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, you still own it.
So you have to wonder, you know, like, what is the difference between a successful entrepreneur endeavor and one that is not so successful? You might say, okay, I'm going to open up a card shop and in the mall, and I'm going to just be my own guy, and I'm going to find card makers and sell cards, right? Or you'll say, I'm going to open up a Hallmark store or one of the other brand names, right? Whatever they are. And you might say, okay, either way, I'm an entrepreneur, but do I benefit from one or the other? Our next guest is going to tell you it's up to you. It's up to you. It doesn't seem to matter. And that's just what I got from the book so far. I haven't finished it. Michael Dermer is on the phone. He's a corporate attorney, an entrepreneur himself. He went through his own, the rug got pulled out from under him, it sounds like. He's a professional speaker, a consultant, a coach for startup businesses, and he's written a book for all of us who want to be in business for ourselves. It's called The Lonely Entrepreneur. The difference between success and failure is your perspective. Michael Dermer, good morning, sir. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from New York City.
All right. How's the weather? Oh, it's cold there today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not like Florida.
Well, thank you for being on the air with us. Yeah, I mean, right there in Times Square. I was just there 2 weeks ago, and there was, in fact, there was a news story this morning. There was some open real estate opportunities on Fifth Avenue. So does a lot have to do with location? That's what they always say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, certainly in New York City it does, and I think those Fifth Avenue locations don't stay open for very long, though.
And that's because they're so expensive, right?
Right, yeah.
But according to the book, it's us, though. We have to have a different perspective if we want to be successful. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, you know, entrepreneurship is growing in leaps and bounds across the United States and, in fact, across the world, and you have, you know, two different businesses, same exact idea, and one might do well and one might not do well, and why is that? And unfortunately, you know, we tell entrepreneurs, you know, if we arm you with things like passion and grit, that's enough.
Yeah.
And it really isn't. We really have to have mechanisms for having entrepreneurs become better entrepreneurs every day. And so a lot of what that comes down to is your perspective of how you deal with all the normal things that come. And a lot of times when we're under the pressure of being an entrepreneur, we develop these flawed perspectives, you know, things like, I have to do everything and I can't prioritize, you know, the things that are natural when we're under the pressure, but actually stunt our progress as a business. So we completely control that, and we can change our perspective to become better entrepreneurs every day.
And how do you manage, how does an entrepreneur manage to do that? You have an idea for a company, you start building it, and then how do you know that the people you take under your wing, you can trust them to help the company grow and have as not much of a passion for it as you?
Well, I'll give you a really good example of one of these flawed perspectives. So when you're working really hard as an entrepreneur and you're developing your idea and you're thinking about bringing on your first employee or consultant, you're so under the pressure and you're working so hard that the person across the table, you may need a nuclear physicist, but you'll say, you know what, this person will be fine, I'll teach them nuclear physics, right? So our own flawed perspectives, our need for help, right, causes us to say, I'll take whoever I can take, when in fact, you know, hiring might be the most important thing that you do. So it's really recognizing that when you're under that pressure, we develop these flawed perspectives. So to your question about people, how do you actually change that? Well, could you go to third parties that you trust to interview them that aren't as biased as you, that can say, maybe this employee is not the right first person to bring
Wow.
aboard. And there's lots and lots of perspectives like that you can change.
Let me tell you what that brings to mind. In this business of radio, years ago, Robin and I were at a different station, and we had been working in radio for many, many years. And the new owner decided to hire a consultant, and the consultant was charging him like $1,000 a day. It was
Yes.
it was unbelievable, and it really must have cost him a fortune just to get advice. And he ended up bailing out because he was losing money. And I said to Robin, I wonder why they didn't ask us. I mean, we're right
Right.
here. We've worked in this
Right.
business for a long time. It didn't make any sense. But I think people sometimes market themselves as experts, and they may not be. That's what you just reminded me of.
Well, I can certainly tell you, I went through it. I started a business that became, the first business to reward people for being healthy. And we built that over the course of 10 years and almost watched it get destroyed by the financial crisis. And having lived through that and then ultimately writing the book, entrepreneurs know that unless you've actually sat in those shoes and know what it's like to think about not making payroll or having people not care as much as you. It's all fine and good to get kind of generic solutions, but unless you've actually been there and know what that is like to feel like,
Right.
It's hard to really understand the solutions and the perspectives that work.
Yeah. So tell me some of the mistakes that are common and typical of an, I don't know if I want to say a new entrepreneur, but I mean, somebody might be making the same mistakes even though they're treading water and they've been open for 10 years.
Absolutely, and it's because we have this passion, and this passion can often make us blind. So I mentioned one before, so things like we believe that taking on everything is actually leadership. When it's actually not, right? It's actually the worst thing that you can do. So entrepreneurs will say, I can't prioritize. And as you all know, in any business, when you can't prioritize, you don't do anything well. So how do you sit down and go, okay, how do I pick the top 3 things that I'm going to do? Right? And I'm really going to focus on that. I'm going to build process around that. So if I have people that are working with me, I'm going to have regular meetings, regular check-ins about those 3 things. And that's not to say you're not going to do the other things, but you're just not going to do them with the same level of priority. If you don't do that, you get subsumed by the hundreds and hundreds of things you need to do as an entrepreneur. And there's lots and lots of examples of that, as you can imagine.
Well, and then what's the solution? Is it to have you delegate tasks to different people? Is that the solution?
Yeah, when you have limited resources, when you set something as a priority, what that means is you bring kind of your best effort and process to it. So that might mean you have a weekly meeting. Let's say all you have is a couple of advisors or consultants that you're not even paying or working full time. They would sit in on that weekly meeting, and you'd use it as a mechanism to efficiently deal with those particular priorities. So you build all your process and resources around the priorities to the extent that you have them, so they do become something you focus on. But even having a weekly meeting and a weekly check-in versus it just flowing through the regular process of your day allows you to focus the effort on these things that are priorities.
Sometimes we have seen restaurants open up and they're very charming and quaint and tiny. And then all of a sudden they get this huge clientele. There's a waiting time to go into the restaurant and things like that. And then the restaurant person decides to double the area to accommodate all the people. But then all of a sudden the business starts to wane. How can you predict that?
What's really interesting about all this is people are almost like learning on the fly, right? Think about your example of somebody that perhaps might be a chef or a restaurateur and now is all of a sudden going to change the configuration of the restaurant. Here's one thing I would say. One of the techniques you can use is go to independent third parties that don't know anything about your business but that you trust. And these don't have to be, to your point before, consultants that you hire. They could just be friends or colleagues that you know that will give you an independent view where it's not kind of subsumed by you being there every day. And even though entrepreneurs might not have large staffs all the time, we all have friends and colleagues and relationships that we can say, hey, we're thinking about expanding the restaurant. What do you think? And hopefully they'll give you, an honest and candid opinion as opposed to the people that are in the business every day.
Yeah, and the other side of that is you have to be willing to listen to whatever it is they say.
Yeah.
I think I find myself often looking for people who will tell me what I want to hear, and I know that's a fault of mine. But I'm better off if I listen to what they say and swallow the bitter pill. Quite often. This is an experience we probably all have had, I'm guessing.
Well, this is one of those really flawed perspectives, right? As an entrepreneur, you're the one that works the hardest and puts your money in and doesn't sleep and sacrifices relationships, right? And at the end of the day, the brutal truth is, if your business is struggling, it's probably your fault. And one of the fundamental problems is what you just said, Larry, which is that we as entrepreneurs really have to be humble and we have to be learners. And we have to want to get better as entrepreneurs. And if we don't, if we bring ego and our own lack of self-esteem issues to not get to the right solution, that's one of those perspectives that you have to change. The day you wake up and say, I'm going to become a better entrepreneur, just like a golfer works on their golf game or a mom works on being a better mom, then you think of entrepreneur not as a job but as an identity. And you actually embrace that process of getting better at it.
Really good stuff. I'm finding this really interesting. Michael, we have to take a little break. The book is called The Lonely Entrepreneur, but we'll be back with Michael Dermer on the other side of the break. It looks like it's about a 3-minute break, so hang in there. If you have any questions for Michael, we invite you to call. The number right now on the air is 622-9622. If you want to get a fast track to the website, it's lonelyentrepreneur.com, and we'll tell you more on the other side. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. Watch for rough surf and strong rip currents at the beaches over the next couple of days. It'll be breezy this Thursday with some sunshine. There can be a shower along the coast, high 80 to 84. Partly cloudy Thursday night, lows in the low to mid-60s inland, 72 on the coast. For Friday, clouds and sunshine and breezy in the afternoon. There can be a shower again at the coast, the high 82 to 86. Saturday, partly sunny, high 82 to 86. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm Joe Lundberg.
Hi, my name is Erica Olstein. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. Do you have a gout-ridden toe or bowels that move too slow, creaky knees, or how about an asthmatic wheeze? Then acupuncture is sure to please. Come visit me, your primary care physician, Erica Olstein, at A Better You Healthcare. Call me at 352-615-5566. That's 352-615-5566.
You have that drip coming down from the corner of the room, but where did it start from?
Bone Dry Roofing can and will fix it right the first time using quality materials and will deal honestly and fairly with you, period. You can find Bone Dry Roofing on their website, bonedryroofingllc.com, and Facebook at Bone Dry Roofing LLC. Do it right before your roof needs a tarp to keep the elements out. Bone Dry Roofing stands behind their work to help make your home safe and secure, plus they have financing available. Remember, if you're not bone dry, then you're all wet.
Are you an animal lover concerned about the black bear issue? Forest Animal Rescue is finishing construction of an 80-acre sanctuary here in Marion County dedicated to helping sick, injured, or abandoned bear cubs be returned to safe habitats in the wild, and you can be a vital part of this effort. Your contribution to Forest Animal Rescue will help complete the new on-site clinic. To learn more or volunteer, call 352-625-7377 or visit forestanimalrescue.org. Will you help?
Next Generation MD is the future of healthcare now. Listen in the first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. to learn how the future in PRP treatments are here in our area. Find out the many ways that Dr. Juan Jordan, MD, Charles Brooks, NP, and case manager Mark Shaw have brought the family medicine practice to a new level. Hear from the very people that benefit from the fine work they have done in this field. Next Generation MD every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. here on WOCA 96.3 FM, 1370 AM, The Source.
All right, 18 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Michael Dermer is on the phone. He's the author of The Lonely Entrepreneur. The difference between success and failure is your perspective. Just a little bit over a year ago, Robin and I were in Chattanooga at the convention of the National Association of Campus Activities, and one of the things that they were showcasing was a speakers group, and I'm thinking Michael would serve the University of Florida in our listening audience, the University of Central Florida, the College of Central Florida, Rasmussen. We have so many colleges in our listening audience. If any of you are listening and you want a great speaker to give your students a little bit of information so that what they're learning will be applicable so they can be successful as entrepreneurs. My gosh, Michael, are you in demand as a speaker? To me, that would be the first thing I would do after this interview was over if I was with one of the schools.
Yeah, it's really terrific because I do it all the time, and it's probably the most rewarding thing is actually being in front of actual people who either are or thinking about being entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'm very much in a mission. It's a very personal thing for everybody. I went through it. So those are the funnest things to do is get in front of actually people and speak to them.
And so I referenced the convention we went to, and it was a way to network. Is networking or a reluctance to network key in the whole entrepreneurial success picture, or not necessarily? Or what are your thoughts on that?
A lot of times with entrepreneurs, trying to figure out how to spend their time and spend their day. And, so let's say you go to a general networking event where people that do your type of business, let's say you're in marketing, right? And you go to a networking event for people in marketing. I actually take a different perspective on it. One of the big things for entrepreneurs is how do you stand out from the crowd, right? So you don't have all the capital and resources that everybody else has. So why would you go where everybody else is going? You almost have to find a playground where you're the only one that's playing. I'll give you an example. So if you're going to sell a red dress and go to Bloomingdale's and Saks and retailers and offer a red dress, they'd say, listen, we have lots of red dresses. But if you took that same red dress and offered it as part of a personal shopping experience for new investment bankers and lawyers in New York City, you might be the only one offering that red dress. So I think sometimes general things like networking where everybody else is going, can we actually spend time thinking about where nobody else is going and you're the only game in town?
Oh, I like that. That was such a great answer. I really agree with that too. That is really a great answer. Rob and I do music on the side when we're not doing this radio show.
Oh, wow.
And it's the same exact thing for us. We had to find a niche. We had to find a particular type of an audience, and it helps us out a lot.
Yeah, and when you don't, remember, what entrepreneurs don't have is capital and resources. What we don't lack is the ability to think differently. And so, what you really have to do when you can't compete with bigger money and bigger resources is actually find that playground where you're the only game in town. And it does require you to find your niche. But sometimes that effort is worth more as opposed to kind of going to the general networking event where all your competition is going to be there.
Is it harder to compete now that there is such an influx on social media?
Well, I think it's harder to compete for a lot of reasons. You have many, many more entrepreneurs coming into the world from all over the world, from Dubai and Shanghai and Pennsylvania and everywhere else in between. But in some senses, it's easy to become an entrepreneur because you have lots of tools. You can market on social media. There's lots of technology, but that actually makes it harder to stand out. Right, because it used to be harder when you had to make big investments to start a business. Now you can launch websites and do social media and get resources pretty quickly because of all the technology. So what it really comes down to is how do you be better at it? If we all have the same tools, why does one flower shop succeed when the other doesn't? And I think it's really the ability of what we said before, embracing the journey of becoming better, but then actually changing some of the perspectives that naturally develop that we've been talking about.
We work as an advertising outlet. Obviously, that's what radio makes its money at. And so we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming here spending money on advertising. And I've often thought, what is the best way to make this advertising work? And it seems to be if there's something a little different, even if they're like a quirky voice on the commercial or something, there's always something that makes it stand out, or there usually is. But marketing is not cheap. It's kind of hard sometimes for a beginning company. I know some of these shops here in the mall. They're just making it. They don't really have much of a budget for advertising.
Yeah, and you really do have to think about your unique niche. It's almost like focus on a particular customer and stick to it, right? So if you sell things to, women whose names start with the letter B, right? Then you know everything about where those women stay, where they shop, where they think, where they hang out.
Right.
Even if it's not the place where they're buying your product. When you focus on a particular niche or a particular customer, you really start to understand it. You get depth, you get understanding, and just like you said before, picking your thing you're unique at. When you get known to be selling to women with the letter B, you can go to C and D and E. But it really does require you to be disciplined and pick a spot and go after it. And then once you win there, you can help all the women with different last names later.
You talk about romantic relationships and how that's a no-no on the job.
Yeah, and remember, when you're in an entrepreneurial venture, these are some of the people that you're spending most of your time with. Being an entrepreneur is already a very personal and visceral experience, right? It's not like working in large corporate America. And those feelings and emotions are real. They're real enough even in not romantic relationships like co-founders, right? We've all heard stories about that becomes difficult. When you start to boil in romantic relationships, even relationships you hear a lot of times where you have husbands and wives that'll start businesses. It's a really tough thing to do because you need to be able to have the kind of antiseptic business conversations that don't bring in. There's already enough emotion there with an entrepreneurial venture. If we're going to, bring in things like marital relationships and others, it's almost better to leave your spouse out of the business and just ask their opinion. And have them be honest with you, Larry, to your point about, maybe they can be candid with you about issues you'd be working on for yourself. But it's already a pretty intense thing and you're passionate about it, so it's hard to bring in those other things as well.
Michael Dermer is our guest. The book is titled The Lonely Entrepreneur, The Difference Between Success and Failure is Your Perspective. I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you did. You offered rewards for healthy behavior. Was that thinking, I know everybody hates the cliche thinking out of the box, but was that you thinking out of the box as a way to grow your business?
It wasn't even a box, Larry. So I was a corporate lawyer in New York City, worked for a big New York law firm, and I literally stumbled upon a statistic that said for every 10 women that don't follow their prenatal care, it costs the healthcare system $1 million. And so we said, well, why wouldn't you just reward those people like we reward people for flying on an airline or staying in a hotel? In the early 2000s, when we started that, not only was it non-existent, it was offensive. We went to healthcare providers and said, you're actually going to pay the people that are doing the worst. So, because you can imagine, we basically, my old company, kind of invented an industry. And so we not only went through, the normal entrepreneurial blood, sweat, and tears, we were basically trying to convince a healthcare industry to do something they had never done before. So just learned a lot about what went into the book and our experiences, along the way, frankly, by, getting our butt kicked and learning from being, kind of in the trenches. So
could you measure the success from doing that? Was it would the dollar amount at the end of it all make sense?
What it did, because the medical profession knew what they wanted to get people to do. They knew that they wanted to get pregnant women to follow their prenatal care and get diabetics to, get biometric screening. So they knew what the results were once they could get them to do it. So the incentives, the financial rewards is what actually got them to do it. So it was just one of those kind of perfect storm ideas that came together, but at the time it certainly didn't exist.
You talk about people yelling and talking over one another to try to get their point across. We see that in everyday life, and just because you're loud doesn't mean you're right.
Talk radio. It's called talk radio.
Yeah.
right. Well, we have these things. One of the perspectives we have is these things called 7 deadly sins. And when you're under the pressure of being the entrepreneur, a lot of times we don't understand these things that we do. When you're the leader and you're talking to whether it's consultants or your employees or others, you don't realize that you're setting the tone for the whole organization. So it's not even just common courtesy. It's just the fact that the people that are around you, right, they see these behaviors every single day, and it starts to set the tone. Remember, you're already under pressure. You need to be able to work together as a team. So imagine if the leader walks in the door, we've all seen this, and everybody kind of rolls their eyes, right, because they just know that they're going to be cut off, right, or they're not going to be listened to. And that's what's part of what's being really hard about being an entrepreneur, is you're not just running the business, you're also the CEO. We have a whole section in the book calling Like It or Not, You Need to Be CEO, right? So these are the types of behaviors that it's not just the behavior in that moment, it's actually what it says to employees and vendors and customers about the type of organization you have.
I have loved this conversation. Michael sent us a copy of his book, so call me if you want the one that was sent to us. The rest of us have to go buy it. Michael Dermer spells his last name Dermer, and the book is called The Lonely Entrepreneur. Let me give this one away, and then we'll get the websites, etc. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
This is Andres Leon.
Andres, do you know where we are?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I do.
Okay, well, the book will be waiting for you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Michael, I think you've got an entrepreneurial hit on your hand right here just with the book. Is lonelyentrepreneur.com the best website to advise listeners to go to?
It is, and we have a whole bunch of tools there, including a free perspective of the day. So if you sign up for our blog there, you get some free tools, and we're launching things like online learning and a whole bunch of other things to help entrepreneurs be better at it.
All right, Michael, thank you for the great interview, and definitely come back anytime. If you're in the area doing a speech at one of the local colleges, let us know.
We'd be happy to, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Some fresh numbers out in the fight for the White House shows a tightening race.
Hillary Clinton is now leading Donald Trump by 3 points, 44 to 41% in the latest Fox poll. In the same poll a week ago, Clinton was leading by 6 points. The week before that, she was up by 7. Trump is getting a boost from independents.